Step into any tavern along the Sword Coast, and after a few rounds of ale, you will find no trouble hearing the legendary dark tales of the lich god Vecna, or the dread lords of the undead Acerak and Larlock. But for every Zaz Tam and Vlorindra, there are countless others, the dark arcane failures of the undead. These stories are not written in heavily warded tomes or lining the archives of Candlekeep, but they are tragic tales, no less. Well, today, we have one such tale, and we're going to world build a monster and an adventure narrative all around it. The Zombie Underlord, right now on Riches and Liches. Welcome, adventurers, scholars, and world builders, to a new series we're calling Monster Makeover, where we will take a low-level monster and homebrew the you-know-what out of it, giving you a unique creature accessible to almost any table, along with a compelling and detailed adventure narrative. Today we are making over your run-of-the-mill zombie to create a flexible zombie underlord, plus a custom minion that might just end up being the star of the video, but I'll let you be the judge. I do want to take just a moment before we start and give a special thank you to two subscribers in particular, Red Fox and Jeremy T, who really went out of their way to share some sincere and thoughtful ideas and feedback that really did help me shape this series. So give me the credit if you love it, and if you don't, I know a couple of guys that can take the fall. Just kidding, I really appreciate you guys. I also just completed a supplement to this video called The Dark Heart of Winter, an adventure pack and world building kit. It's 11 pages of homebrew lists, a story narrative, treasures, lairs and lair actions, image art, and a stat block for this custom zombie underlord and his minions that I'm going to share with you today. It's available in PDF form over on my Patreon right now. Now, the PDF is nice to have for sure, but worry not if you can't support me over there. We'll cover as much as we can in this volume. Okay, let's get going, and in the future, you have my word, this is the longest intro you will see in this series. Lich's honor. I think this one's going to be a lot of fun. Now please, join me as we take a pathetic low-level zombie and give him a makeover into Decavius Gorsoil, Zombie Underlord. We will start each video in our Monster Makeover series by providing a profile on the base monster that is the subject of our upgrade, to familiarize you with the before state. In getting to know the base zombie, you would certainly be forgiven for thinking, it's a zombie. It's both among the most insignificant of Dungeons & Dragons monsters and one of the most widely recognizable and understood. I mean, who hasn't seen The Walking Dead by now? And you're not wrong. Calling the zombie insignificant is probably being kind, but that is also why the zombie makes such a great monster makeover candidate in the first place. The zombie in particular really suffers from overexposure and a significant branding problem that has, specifically in the last decade or two, really robbed them of any fear that they once instilled in the living. We're going to try to fix that today. And while this is not by any stretch a 5th edition only problem, I think we can all agree that the 5th edition version of the zombie leaves a lot to be desired. With a challenge rating of 1/4 and an armor class of 8, even the most freshly rolled characters will not have much to fear from one of these shambling dead. But there's the rub, for it's pretty rare that you will, or at least should, run into just one of these. Something that can be capitalized on with minion rules, swarms, and skill challenges. I'll touch on some of these a bit later because I definitely have some opinions, but that's likely a topic that deserves its own video. The zombie, as defined in nearly any and every movie, video game, and comic book, are rarely alone, and that is where they go from insignificant to, at least potentially, pretty deadly. And there are 3 aspects of the bone stock out of the book 5th edition zombie that you should be aware of. In the world of Dungeons & Dragons, the zombies, while still sluggish, certainly possess greater mobility than what TV might lead you to believe with a base speed of 20. Additionally, the base zombie does not spread any contagion, so there is little fear of them converting your whole party a la Dawn of the Dead. But I will point out that zombies are also pretty hardy with their undead fortitude and a base hit points of 22. Not bad for a monster with a challenge rating of 1/4. Still, they are not much to fear, that is until our work here is done. So we don't necessarily want to change the base zombie. In fact, I think it's fine as is, in the sense that you need low-level options for many monsters. However, the overexposure issue is a real problem, and as long as weak zombies are thrown out as fodder for a group who are intimately aware of their insignificance, that likely won't change. So the zombie needs some diversity and upgrades, not to replace but to complement. And since the targets of this Makeover series at large are the lower-level, uninteresting, and/or insignificant creatures, it's also a great opportunity to provide you some customization options and insight to improve these creatures in a more general manner, outside or even in support of our creation today. So let's do that right now. Looking at our base zombie, there are a myriad of ways to bring back some of the fear into these undead. But the method most often used is one I would strongly caution against. It's not just about making the zombie more powerful, especially in terms of raw power. Instead, it's about the plausibility, surprise, and adding some psychological terror. I pulled a few homebrew abilities I created for the Dark Heart of Winter to share with you as examples of how to add a layer of horror and unpredictability to encounters, to make the zombies not just a physical threat, but also a source of that missing fear and terror. I'm sure it goes without saying, but just to be safe, when adding any of these abilities, please be aware of balance. Just adding one of these will exponentially increase the challenge rating of a base zombie that starts with a CR of 1/4. And that balance is only compounded as you add multitudes of these walking dead. Okay, I'll start with the most common sense of abilities, an enhanced grapple. Now, I'm giving Kobold Press credit for this, although I'm guessing this variant's been around for a while. That's where I found it several years ago. In their Accursed Dread Bestiary, they introduced the Grasping Horde ability. If a creature is grappled by more than one creature with this ability, it has disadvantage on any ability checks to escape that grapple. Really plays into the zombie horde theme. Another thematic modification that I like to add to my zombies is one I created and named the Vile Pincushion. With it, the zombie exhibits an eerie resilience to ranged piercing attacks and seems unfazed by all but the most precise strikes with arrows and bolts. So yeah, it's a ranged piercing immunity to arrows and bolts, unless you score a critical. That's a concession I made some years ago to a crossbow hunting Daryl/Norman Reedus loving player, so take that for what you will. Alternatively, if you feel that's too restrictive, you could adjust it to a flat single point per non-critical arrow or bolt strike, or something similar. Now let's get really creative. I'll share my favorite 2 of the 10 I've created thus far. The first is called Chains of the Dead. I actually thought of this one while I was writing about the Chitin or Chain Devil for the Nine Hells lore series. With Chains of the Dead, the zombie can, as an action, cause ethereal chains to erupt from its body and attempt to grapple the target at range. These chains are cold to the touch and can pass through solid objects, representing the zombie's tether to the afterlife. Alternatively, you could swap these out for vines or ropes to change the flavor up, and you could also add cold or even psychic damage for some added fear. This second ability is one of my personal favorites to really add terror. It's thematically perfect for medieval or gothic horror campaigns and embodies exactly the kind of repulsion one should expect when dealing with one of these vile creatures. Although I have to caution here, this won't fit every table or player's style, so if you plan on something like this, be sure to cover it in a session 0, or otherwise simply talk to your players first to ensure everyone is comfortable with a true medieval horror-themed monster. I call it Festering Wound. The zombie's body plays host to maggots, carrion worms, something yucky you pick. When the zombie takes slashing damage, there's a percentage chance that a swarm of these worms is released that will then join the battle and attack the source of the damage on the zombie's next turn. I got this idea actually when I was doing research on the Orthon Devil, how tame and lame it's become in 5e compared to its 3e counterpart. And I would add here that the damage from the worm swarm should be minimal. The concept is far more about psychological than physical. And again, don't forget the potential compounding effect if there are multiple zombies present. Regardless if it fits into your party's comfort level, it's a great way to make your players think twice about zombies and kind of put that fear factor back into the undead. I'd really love to share all 10 I created, but we have so much more to cover. We're just getting started and No surprise, my script has obliterated my 20 to 25 minute goal for this video. Perhaps if there is interest, we could do a follow-up video that focuses solely on the homebrew customizations, but you let me know if that's something you'd like to see. Moving away from the bog standard zombies and into the genesis of our Zombie Lord, an important aspect of our makeover, dare I say the most important aspect, certainly as far as I'm concerned, is the adventure narrative. This won't be a surprise to anyone that has watched or listened to my story lore videos, and regardless of my skill or lack thereof in the writing or storytelling, creating the lore and the story is easily the facet I enjoy most. So there was simply no way I was going to do a series like this and not incorporate the one facet of creating a new monster that I find just as critical as the stats and abilities. I just cannot stress enough, without a good adventure narrative, one that wraps the new monster in the proper mix of mystery, urgency, and fear, no monster, no matter how unique or deadly, will have the same impact as one that has a strong story, history, and lore behind it. To that end, as we move through this volume, we will also craft an adventure narrative to surround and complement our creation. While not a complete room-by-room, end-to-end adventure, that would take far longer than we have time for, I have provided enough details that whether you lift it whole cloth or drop it into your next or existing adventure, or just use whatever facets inspire you, it's my hope that it provides you a solid foundation, or at least that creative spark from which to world build something unforgettable that's best suited for your table and your players. Our adventure narrative is broken down into 3 parts, not unlike the 3-act story structure you're likely familiar with. First is the introduction to adventure. This is really a spoiler-free summary geared towards your players. Think of it like the back of the book text or a movie trailer to get the adventurers excited. Next is the transformation story. It's designed to build the history and the lore of our new monster. And finally, the revelation and/or resolution is where we clearly lay out the overall plot and the near-term as well as any far-reaching campaign objectives. For our introduction to adventure, one we will openly share with our players, we're heading into the frigid northlands of the frozen far region, where we will find rumors of a terrified community and hear the whispers of a sinister threat. In the frigid expanse of Icewind Dale, among the remote settlements and villages that make up the region known as Ten Towns, disturbing whispers chill the air with the same biting breath as that of Lady Winter's numbing kiss. A darkness stirs beneath the snow where graves now lie empty, torn from their icy rest and the earthen grasp that once held them. These days, the dead do not sleep their eternal slumber. Brave heroes and intrepid adventurers are called to the icy north by these unsettling reports. Graveyards across the frozen far are plundered, bodies vanishing into the night. The villagers speak of wretched, gaunt, and disfigured monsters that haunt the periphery of their vision, while the persistent sound of excavation reverberates underfoot. What evil force drives this desecration of sacred ground? What dread waits buried in the permafrost of winter's forgotten lands? Your journey will lead you through snow-laden forests and into the heart of a mystery that bridges the gap between the glow of the living and the shades of the dead. Beneath the surface lies a tale of ambition gone awry, of ancient powers locked away in the cold depths, and of a desperate entity caught between realms. Are you prepared to face the chilling truths that wait in the frozen north? Will you steel your nerves to descend into the cold unknown to confront whatever horrors might claw at the foundations of this region? Gather your courage and ready your warmest cloaks, for adventure awaits, where the boundary between life and death grows perilously thin. The dark heart of winter beckons, and with it, the fate of Icewind Dale may change forever. Now let me get ahead of the incoming comments to all you CRPG fans out there. It was not lost on me that the Heart of Winter is also the name of the expansion for the video game of Icewind Dale. As I was going through my 30-year-old Trapper Keeper homebrew tome, I caught it immediately. I can only guess that the far younger GM version of me was easily influenced and/or not very creative. But as I read through my old notes, some of which this adventure narrative is based upon, notes I created almost 2 decades ago, I did chuckle at the near-title plagiarism. And whether it was intentional or not, I don't remember, I cannot be sure. But now that credit has been attributed, and I was crafty enough to add the word dark in front of the title, I'm not going to change it, although you certainly can. Regardless, the Dark Heart of Winter, that's the setup for today's monster makeover, to take the plain Jane lowly zombie and give him a significant upgrade and a purpose. We're going to create and empower him into something so much more. We can now proceed with Part 2, the transformation story for GMs and world builders. A word of caution if you're a player, spoilers lie ahead. If you think you or your table might enjoy running this spoiler-free in the future, you might want to stop now and pass the link on to your dungeon master. I will not be offended, even if the algorithm might. Our tale of transformation starts in an insignificant tin town in the frigid north and centers around a lamentable caretaker, a middle-aged man named Darius Gorman. Darius is a man that will likely generate no sympathy from your heroic party, but that's exactly our desired result. The Gravedigger's story begins with misfortune. Born into the harshest of climates and community, Darius existed on the fringes of a town as unyielding as winter's grasp. An orphan among the scant families of Dugan's Hole, he was shunned, pitied, and dismissed in equal measure. Solitude marked his days, for he served as the town's caretaker of the dead, digging graves and interring bodies beneath the numbing frost. Yet even in death's silent company, he always sensed a whispering unrest, as if even the departed recoiled at his touch. Enter Evram Voss, a powerful and ancient necromancer rumored to originate from the Citadel of the Raven. A practitioner of the dark arts, Evram was even rumored to somehow find association with the infamous Manshoon of the Black Network that you may know better as the Zhentarim. Evram Voss, a name that perhaps once commanded fear and respect, now lingered as a warning against the folly of reaching beyond one's grasp. His story is a sorrowful tale of ambition, rivalry, and hubris. Once a scholar of the arcane, the mage's thirst for power saw him delve into necromancy, seeking the eternal dominion over life and death promised by lichdom. But the ritual failed. Evram insisted it was sabotage. Regardless, the devastating consequences left his body a ruined vessel and much of his mind and spirit tethered to the Shadowfell, a realm of echoes and despair. And it is here that he has languished for the last century. Truth told, Evram should have been obliterated by whatever misfortune aborted his dark ritual. But his spirit was too stubborn, too spiteful to be vanquished whole. In this transitory state, the failed lich is left yearning for the touch of the material plane, a world he can no longer navigate. Indeed, the simplest of mortal powers now lay beyond his reach. Yet, as Evram's dark might slowly rekindled over these many years, the necromancer, fixated on retribution and lichdom, devised a plan. A scheme where any chance of success rested upon navigating the corporeal realm. It was in this liminal torment, a prisoner between planes, that Evram's path crossed with that of Darius Gorman. Our outcast caretaker, with his longing for significance, was the perfect mark for Evram's manipulation. Seeking to re-emerge onto the material plane, a surrogate was required, a proxy in which he could enact his will upon the mortal world. In Darius he found such a fool, a pawn for the necromancer's game. With a web of lies and meager gifts to curry favor, Evram coaxed the gullible Darius with false promises of something much greater, the temptation of authority, respect, and power. And so, finding the allure too great, many months later, under the canvas of a cold starless night, Darius agreed to a fool's gambit and began a perilous venture into forbidden dark arts he knew nothing about. Guided by the sinister Evram and manipulated like that of a stringed puppet. Yet as the dark energies surged forth and the ritual completed, they twisted not into a crown of ultimate power, but instead a shackle of servitude and undeath. Darius was transformed, not into the mighty being as he had foolishly believed, but into a decayed, rotting, and far lesser of the undead hierarchy, a zombie, an underlord in unerring service, bent to the will of the necromancer's every command. Through indescribable pain and torment emerged the cavous gore soil. his mutation into undeath marking the birth of a new terror beneath the frozen earth of Icewind Dale, and Evrim, now with purpose and a puppet, his anchor to the material plane. As we look to finish off our adventure narrative, we want to make sure it answers the three most critical questions, the holy trinity of campaign structure, if you will: the how, the why, and the what. How did our zombie lord rise to power? Why should your party care about what's happening around them? Why should they be motivated or invested in the cause? And what are the heroes ultimately striving to achieve or prevent? So we have our Zombie Underlord in servitude to a failed lich who seeks something on the mortal realm that is beyond his physical reach. Thus he required a mortal anchor to provide some agency to enact a plan that we still don't know anything about. Yeah, there are definitely questions remaining. Thus far, we have definitely answered the how, but have barely addressed the why and the what. So we need to ensure those are answered in the revelation and resolution, the final part of our adventure narrative. And it's here that I'd like to point out how important it is to be aware of the balance needed between mystery and obscurity. It's a thin but critical line. You don't want to provide too much of the plot, as mystery, curiosity, and even a little fear of the unknown is a significant driver in almost any adventure. But at the same time, if a group of players are not given enough information, the DM's likely to find the players scrolling about on their phones. So it's our job as dungeon masters and world builders to slowly draw the adventurers into the story, ensuring that they will come to understand the true weight of these events at the appropriate time while maintaining that heavy presence of mystery. Keeping that in mind, let's look at the remaining story beats to round out our adventure narrative. And in doing so, let's remember that Evrim, our evil necromancer seeming to pull the strings, can and may ultimately end up as the final encounter of your campaign, if you so choose, but he is not our objective for this adventure or even the campaign chapter. In fact, he is likely not even really accessible at this stage, being partially tethered, shackled within the Shadowfell. So while hints of a greater power beyond or even controlling Decavus have their place, how much you share really depends on the scope of your world-building effort, and if you want to seed Evrim for a larger campaign or story arc. Of course, I'm sharing the full narrative with you today so that you can make those decisions, so that you have all the tools to build your own conduit around anything from a one-off single adventure to a sprawling greater campaign. But I mention this all as a caution, as you'll want to avoid inadvertently forcing your players down a dead-end road. Let's close out part 3 of our adventure narrative, the revelation and/or resolution. In his century of imprisonment, Evrim has certainly had ample time to devise a strategy, all in an effort to attain the lichdom that has thus far eluded him. And to enact his own gambit with the powers of the unholy, he needs Decavus to act as his dominated agent upon the mortal plane. Which is important, because below the ice-bound northern lands of the frozen far, far beneath lairs of frost and stone, thrums the dark heart of winter, Neverwinter in fact, a nexus of ancient and dark creation energies. Now let's stop here for a second so that I can dish out some advice and a few homebrew options you might find interesting. This dark heart of winter is my not so creatively named plot device, and it's located deep underground Neverwinter. But it doesn't have to be. Not only can our MacGuffin be just about anything you want, it can be located anywhere your party has access to. Heck, move away from the 10 towns and the frozen far region altogether if you think your players would enjoy another setting. I promise you that taking the time here to craft some strong lore and backstory for your plot device, along with its associated mechanics, is one of the better time investments you'll make in building out an adventure. So to help ignite your imagination, I've created 2 alternative plot device artifacts to replace the Dark Heart of Winter, each using real Forgotten Realms canonical lore, but in a completely fabricated twist, so definitely homebrew, and you should feel free to revise to your liking. First up, deep within the subterranean caverns of the infamous Dark Lake in the Underdark lies a gem known as the Night Tear. This unholy relic absorbs and emits the pure darkness of its surroundings. Fabled to be formed from a tear shed by the goddess of darkness herself, Shar, Evrim believes it holds the potential to envelop souls in eternal shadow that can be manipulated to complete his ascension to lichdom. If adventuring into the Underdark is not your party's style, then have them head south near Waterdeep in search of the Wizard Tower of Agaron, or depending on what year your adventure takes place, perhaps it's just his ruins. Agaron was the famed mage and first open lord of Waterdeep, a wizard that lived 336 years and died in 1256 Dale Reckoning. Regardless, Evrim can send his Zombie Underlord to the tower in search of the Mage of the North's Black Scrolls. Imbued with his vast secrets of power, the necromancer is convinced they'll provide the dark knowledge he needs for lichdom. But whatever your plot device is and wherever it is to be located, to reach it, Evrim has empowered Dekavis with a few unique abilities. First, our Zombie Underlord can raise the dead and has already begun amassing an ever-growing horde of twisted, lanky, and malformed zombies. But these undead, his minions, are not the sluggish rotting corpses of fables or 5e monster manuals. No, they are lean, monstrous parodies of life. They're endowed with alacrity and long arms and oversized, sharp claws that are purpose-built to equally carve into earth or into one's flesh. They're a homebrew creation of mine called the Tunnel Terrors, and they lair with Dekavis beneath Dugan's Hole, at least for now, where they tirelessly carve out a network of tunnels directed towards that ancient power hidden deep under Neverwinter or wherever you place your own MacGuffin. Now, my Tunnel Terrors as printed are challenge rating 3, but they should be adjusted not just based on your party level, as I would strongly recommend also evaluating how they'll be used in your adventure. Will your party encounter just a few at a time, or do you want to run a full-blown zombie horde encounter? And if you are planning to run a zombie horde, well, I probably need to do another video. But I'll touch on some options you have when we cover these minions in a little bit more depth in Chapter 10. Nonetheless, let's continue. The failed Lich, through the seeping whispers from the Shadowfell, has ensnared the mind of Dekavis, driving his Underlord to lead his growing undead army in excavating a network of tunnels, all converging upon the dark heart of winter. With the entirety of the 10 Towns region now fully aware of a strong undead presence, our why question should be mostly answered. So now let's cover the what. What does Evrim intend to do with the dark heart of winter, which in turn will inform what the heroes need to do or accomplish to stop him? For my adventure narrative, once Dekavis locates and secures the dark heart of winter, Evrim plans to corrupt the primordial power source in order to enact a devastating ritual that is over a century in the making. By drawing upon his own power, tapping into the Shadowfell, where he is currently imprisoned, and channeling those necrotic energies into the dark heart, he will twist and corrupt its powerful magic. Once that unholy ritual is complete, the dark heart of winter will act as a soul harvester of sorts, draining the souls of the surrounding populace of Neverwinter and perhaps beyond, the innocent life forces fueling his ascent to lichdom. With our adventure now laid out, we have our how, why, and what pretty well covered. But let's quickly look at the why again. Undead are running around 10 Towns. That might be sufficient. But it would probably be a good idea to create some unique means to deliver this news, and organically get the players interested and then invested in the plot that is unfolding. And the key word here, for me, is organically. Now, I know at the end of the day, the DM can just tell the party, hey, the adventure I have starts by getting your butts up north. And hey, if that works for your table, then go with the gods. I'm not here to tell you that that's wrong. But for me personally, I really prefer to keep things as much in-universe as possible, and for those that are of like mind, there are a number of rumors, tales, and hints that can drive our party to investigate. But the more important task is to create some good and yet unique mechanisms or plot hooks to deliver this information. I mean, you always have the age-old but tried-and-true tavern rumors, but let me share 4 that I designed around different aspects of a potential party makeup that might add further incentive. First up is the Harper's Dispatch. This is a good vehicle for information and rumor delivery if you have a rogue in your party or anyone that is a member of or close to the Harpers. If so, a coded message from the spy network arrives, hinting at unrest in the 10 towns. The message contains subtle hints about the Earth's unrest and graves giving up their dead, all directing the player to investigate further on behalf of the Harpers. You could even step it up a bit by introducing and befriending the party to an NPC Harper earlier in your adventure, so that when this news comes, it's given the weight of an ally's request. If you have a paladin or a cleric in your group, a local man or woman of the cloth can be introduced, one driven by a divine vision of desecrated ground who seeks out the party. They had a vision, and they share that fragmented and recurring prophecy, one they just can't shake. It speaks that the heart of the realm is soon betrayed, and that the undead shadow grows under the northern graves, which could of course lead the party in the right direction to the 10 Towns region. If you happen to have a dwarf among you, I'd enjoy a scenario where, along their travels, the party discovers a map among a miner's belongings. It shows recent tunnel collapses and earthen sinkholes all around 10 Towns. The map includes strange markings that correlate the collapses suspiciously with the graveyard locations across Icewind Dale, suggesting a definitive pattern to these disturbances. And finally, you can always have a party member experience a vivid dream where a ghostly spirit near a lake, calling herself the White Lady, beckons you to travel to Lake Dineshire, one of the 3 lakes in the Frozen Far. I would have the dream reoccur every night, with each dream revealing a few extra details, eventually urging the party to uncover the truth behind the restless dead. And then, if all the above fail, well, you've got a pretty dense party on your hands, so you have my sympathy, and yeah, just tell them to get their butts to 10 Towns. And now it's time to focus on our undead man of the almost hour, our caretaker turned zombie underlord, Decavus Goresoil. As we look at his upgrade, I would call out here that anyone can do the math to make a monster more deadly. Increasing armor, hit points, and damage alone is pretty simple. It's low effort. But just because a monster is now more powerful does not automatically make it an interesting or fun encounter. So what makes our zombie underlord different from an easily boosted zombie? Well, much of that will be up to you. I'm simply here to share my philosophy and some unique creation ideas to make that happen, although I will certainly share my own zombie underlord. Let's take a look at my Decavus Goresoil. If you have already picked up the Dark Heart of Winter PDF stat block I made, you will notice the underlord ended up with a challenge rating of 9. But depending upon which of the custom mythic actions you choose, keep in mind that the challenge rating of your underlord can vary greatly. So this is just a friendly reminder that the whole point of this series is to make the monster accessible and relevant for a wide range of party levels. So feel free to experiment and find out what works best for your players. For those that would like to use my version of this zombie lord but don't have the ability to support me over on Patreon, I totally understand. No worries, I gotcha. Let me go ahead and share the stat block in visual form. As you're looking that over, you can see our once humble gravedigger now has an armor class of 16 and a formidable 136 hit points. And while his innate spellcasting is present, it's fairly limited, a DC 12 wisdom caster. However, one of his most significant abilities, one you will want to make sure is balanced as you scale Decavus up or down in challenge rating, is unique and geared thematically with this adventure. Evrim has bestowed upon our zombie lord the at-will ability to raise any undead humanoid within 60 feet and instantly transform them into one of his tunnel terror minions. Although to keep the balance in check during combat, I have his power limited to 1 corpse per action. He is further augmented by 2 mythic actions. These are a unique adaptation of the rules for legendary actions that I've used for more than a few years. I think every DM has some version of this, so don't let anyone, myself included, make you think they are reinventing the wheel or breaking any new ground here. Mine, which while mechanically similar to legendary actions, are generally less powerful and are laced with some inherent weaknesses and often also have visual cues that hint at potential countermeasures. The first that I've selected is the Grave Chill, a mythic action that costs 2 actions. Decavus releases a bone-penetrating cold in a 20-foot radius around his form. All targets must resist with a DC 16 Constitution saving throw or have their speed reduced by 10 feet as their limbs begin to freeze up. However, like all of my mythic actions, this chilling effect has its flaws. Those holding a torch or that are near a significant heat source can resist the grave chill with advantage, their warmth fending off the unnatural cold. And visually, Decavus becomes shrouded in a cold, icy mist that seems to sizzle and dissipate when it's near open flames, trying to reveal or hint to the weakness of this ability. And in a display of his dominion over death and earth, my Zombie Underlord can use his second mythic action, which costs the full 3 actions, to command 1 to 4 of his Tunnel Terror minions to burst from a 20-foot hole in the ground at any point within 60 feet of the Zombie Underlord's current location. However, these creatures are weakened by the light, their vision adapted to the eternal darkness of the grave. I'll break that down along with the Tunnel Terror as our second monster in the next and final chapter. But if you don't like these, feel free to swap them out with my list or your own creations. Either way, hopefully I've sparked some ideas to make Decavus your own. And so we finally come upon the last chapter in our first and far too long monster makeover. Seriously, friends, I'm beginning to think I'm incapable of sticking to a content length restriction. But you know what? A not insignificant part of me is completely okay with it, as long as you are. Do you mind these long extended videos? Please let me know in the comments, because at the end of the day, it's your feedback that will dictate the content format that I use going forward, so flex that power and let me know. In any event, I would be remiss to not put the spotlight on our Zombie Underlord's personal horde of custom zombies before we get out of here. The Tunnel Terrors are a new creature I created just for the Dark Heart of Winter and are distinguished by their unnaturally long arms ending in massive, razor-sharp claws. These limbs are not just tools of terror, but also instruments of excavation, allowing the twisted horrors to navigate the underground with a burrow speed of 20, all designed to keep with our subterranean adventure theme. While not tunneling, they also possess a level of agility that is a stark contrast to the typically sluggish stereotype associated with the undead. I created these as a challenge rating 3 creature with an armor class of 12 and a fairly weak 36 hit points, especially for that challenge rating. If you compare that to, say, a CR3 mummy stat block from the 5th edition, that averages around 58 hit points. That's about a 37% reduction. But that's by design to balance out some cool special abilities that I wanted to give them. Still, not enough playtesting. You'll certainly want to do that if you run this in one of your adventures. Regardless, even with the below average health, the Tunnel Terror is already a significant upgrade over the base 5e zombie. But we are not nearly done yet. These underground dwelling zombies also have the Undead Fortitude and Grasping Horde abilities, plus you can select one of 2 special abilities that I added to its arsenal. The first I simply named Clawed Frenzy. In a whirlwind of violence, the Tunnel Terror can unleash 2 additional claw attacks in a single action. Or another new ability called Tunnel Vision, where in their preferred habitat of darkness and in tunnels of their own making, these custom zombies gain an almost supernatural sense of their surroundings, giving them blind sight to 30 feet in dim light or darkness, while also within their tunnels. While neither of these are legendary, obviously, remember this was created as a CR3 monster. So to best balance the Tunnel Terrors, I also designed them with a vulnerability. Again, in keeping with the whole adventure narrative of subterranean tunneling, remaining underground and unseen whenever possible. As such, they have a strong sensitivity to light, and when exposed to it, they are at disadvantage on attacks and any wisdom checks where sight is involved. This is similar to what a drow experiences. Still, overall, this is a definitive and significant departure in terms of challenge rating from your typical zombie, something you'll really want to keep in mind as you balance out any encounter using the Tunnel Terrors. And part of that balance equation should be determining how you will use these homebrew monsters, specifically in terms of quantity. In the Dark Heart of Winter, I take to calling these Tunnel Terrors minions of Decavus, and that they are constantly growing in number. which certainly could indicate, but doesn't automatically mandate that your party would need to face a true Shaun of the Dead level horde event. And this is where I want to add a few comments and personal opinions. While I will concede that doing a true zombie horde level event versus a party can be challenging, rewarding, and is a vastly different playstyle experience, it is also very subjective, and in my own personal experience, it can be just as frustrating as it is exciting. In fact, I've really found no middle ground. The good experiences have been fantastic, and the bad experiences were regrettable. A lot of that has to do with your players, so having that informal discussion ahead of time is so critically important. However, if you are bound and determined to try this, let me share my recommendations for you to at least consider, or of course ignore at your own leisure. My first recommendation is a no-brainer. I just covered it. Talk to your players first. Explain the changes in the playstyle that it'll bring and how they will be handled mechanically. Once that discussion is had, and if all parties are excited to participate, that segues us right into the available mechanics of running a large zombie horde with overwhelming numbers. Let's start with the easiest and generally my default choice. This is the one I've had the most success with, and one I will definitely recommend if there's any chance the party could have more than one such encounter with any quantity that would be considered a horde. Probably my favorite rule from the 4th edition, don't say I never say nice things about 4E, is the 4th edition minion rules, and they can most certainly apply no matter what version you're running. In its most simple 4th edition rule as written form, each minion has their normal abilities, but only have a single hit point, which means that any hit requires no damage to be rolled, the minion is simply dead. There are of course variants to this. Some let the minion perform a save, some give them 2 hit points in case of a bad player roll, etc. For attacking, depending upon how many are in the total horde, you have them attack as a group in packs of anywhere from 2 to 5 as normal. Although if you're planning an epic 100 zombie horde invasion, you should feel free to adjust that, and then maybe you should be looking at a whole other system. That's a lot. What I do at my table, and I think this is 4th edition rule as written, but it's late and I don't want to look it up, but I'm sure you'll let me know if I'm wrong. I add a +1 to the attack for every minion in the pack. So for instance, a pack of 2 minions at my table is +2, a pack of 5 would be +5, which I also cap at 5, even if you're grouping higher minion totals. Now, one of the homebrews I've used for a decade is designed to give melee a boost in these situations. I mean, come on, the front line, sword and board is taking all the damage while a mage drops back and casts fireball. To help out the melee brothers and sisters, I created the Power Strike ability, only active during minion horde rules. With this 100% homebrew rule, if the melee strikes with a natural 16 or higher, then they get to roll another die. Usually it's a D4 or a D6. It really depends upon the overall size of the horde. And that is the total number of minions that are insta-killed. Keep in mind here, for my table, on the rare occasions we run a horde like this, I want the party to feel like superheroes, so they get to do crazy stuff like cleaving 6 in one swing. Yeah, it's not realistic, but you know what? Neither's riding a dragon or casting a fireball, you know? It's fantasy, and I want my table to have fun. Now, pushing all of that aside, I'm only going to briefly touch on another option that can be used to handle hordes, the skill challenge system. And let me be clear, I like the skill challenge system for other things, escaping a collapsing temple ruin, for example. But my experience using the system for large-scale battles has been tepid at best. And I've got to say that I find it infinitely humorous that it seems like half the TTRPG content providers seem to tout they have invented some new skill challenge system, okay? The fact is, this is another 4th edition system that was invented almost 2 decades ago. And dozens, heck, maybe hundreds of skill challenge homebrew variants existed at tens of thousands of tables within the first year or two of 4th edition's launch in 2008. And to be blunt, the saturation on YouTube with all the renamed micro-tweak variants I find a bit off-putting, so I won't be doing a video on yet another, but they're out there, or you could look in the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide for the real deal. In any event, I personally don't use the skill challenge system for any large-scale battles. I just find the minion rules are a little more simplistic, and you can tweak those to your liking. but if you found better luck with them, I'd love to hear about it, so let me know. These are just my opinions. As we close out this first Monster Makeover volume, I would really appreciate your feedback so we can continually improve this series. Is there anything you hope to see covered that I missed? Did you notice that this volume had significantly less custom art, in contrast to our normal, larger epic lore videos that each routinely take me about 60 hours to create? I really wanted to get these videos out to you faster. However, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that decision and the series at large. Did you find it useful or interesting? Your opinions really do matter. Everything we covered today and a whole lot more are included in my Dark Heart of Winter Adventure Pack and World Builder Kit. It includes full stat blocks, alternative mythic actions, images, treasures, lairs, lair actions, additional plot devices and mechanics, all in PDF form on my Patreon. I'm actually pretty proud of it, and I put a lot of time and thought into it. It's not perfect, I'm sure it's not, but I'd love you to check it out and let me know what you think, so just like these videos, I can keep improving on that as well. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links below, and if you think I earned it, please like and subscribe. As always, thanks for listening, and until next time, remember, the only limitation at your table is your imagination.